So hi folks, this is a short tutorial on soldering. My name's Jason McComb. I'm going to go through some of the practices involved. We're going to talk about the tools that you'll need, health and safety requirements, some considerations when soldering, and then we're going to go into joining two wires and do some splice connections as well. So first of all, the tools that you'll need. You'll need a soldering iron. It can either be gas or electric, although gas is usually the preferable one. Wire strippers and cutters. You'll need a soldering pad. You'll need solder. You'll need some amalgamating tape, heat shrink, insulation tape and cloth tape, depending on what type of joint you're doing on to insulate that solder joint off. So a bit of health and safety first of all. Soldering iron gets very hot. It gets up to temperatures ranging between 300 degrees Celsius and 550 degrees Celsius. It also contains, solder also contains a clothony called rosin, and this clothony rosin is quite dangerous. So it's advisable to wear gloves when you're soldering, especially if you already have a skin infliction already, for instance something like eczema or dermatitis. It's advisable to wear gloves. And if you're susceptible to asthma, then it's also advisable to wear a face mask, or if you have a breathing difficulty, then it's worthwhile getting yourself a face mask as well. But you can alleviate that situation by making sure that you're in an area with more than adequate ventilation, like an open air, or with all the doors open on the vehicle, and with the workshop open as well. So some considerations to think about before soldering. Well, the first thing you need to think about is the solder itself. The solder has a melting point, and generally for soldering cables, the melting point normally comes out around about, for the right solder, is around about 220 to 230 degrees Celsius. So when you then consider that solder, you need to consider the soldering iron. Does it go up to the working temperature? You know, what is its working temperature? Because it needs to then work at 150 degrees Celsius above the solder melting point. So in essence, if you're working with solder that's around about 226 degrees Celsius, then your soldering iron needs to hit around about 376, 377 Celsius. If the soldering iron doesn't get hot enough, the solder won't travel, it won't melt, you'll end up with a messy joint. So it's getting that nice balance, because if you do get it too hot, then you can end up with a situation where you can overheat the flux and you end up with a lot more fumes than anything else, and you end up with the solder travelling too far down the cable. The great thing about gas soldering irons is they're completely variable, so that you can allow for that. And by having a variable temperature gas soldering iron, it allows you to compensate for atmospheric ambient temperatures, the gauge and the construction of the cable. It may have a tin coating on it, and also, more importantly, the age of the cable as well. So we're going to go through a little demonstration.
Hi folks, so this is a quick demonstration on how to do some soldering. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to join these two cables together. So apply a bit of, apply a bit of heat shrink over the end of the cable. Strip back about 15 to 20 millimeters of cable, both sides. And then what you need to do is splay the cable back, like so. Splay that cable back as well. And then when they're splayed, simply cross over and twist them around each other. So there's no spikes at all. Get my soldering iron on. And then once you've got the twist going, That's all twisted up nicely. Get it in position ready to do the soldering. Make sure the heat shrinks back along the cable far enough so you don't heat the heat shrink up. The soldering iron's now nicely warmed up. So all we do is start it off gently on the soldering iron, get a bit of solder on the soldering iron. Once you've got the solder on the soldering iron, you should then gently go through the cable. Start in the middle and work your way out to the edges. So you've got a nice little joint like so. We'll leave our soldering iron on over there. So as you can see now, that's nicely joined up. It's nice and shiny. And then wait for it to gently cool down. And then when it's ready, just put a bit of heat shrink over. And then gently heat up the heat shrink. Try not to scorch it. So that's nicely sealed the joint, like so. To make a splice connection, or T-joint as they would like to call it, firstly there's your supply cable, so this is going to be my supply donor, and then on your cable that you're going to splice off, strip back the cable the same length, around about 20 millimeters, and then what you need to do is to tin up the supply, only a little bit, just a little, just so that you know, you're confident then that there's actually solder on that middle joint. This avoids dry joints. With that over, then you then twist the cable from your device around that main cable, and then tin up that joint like so. The great thing about that is you haven't overheated that cable up too much, because that's one of the main concerns about soldering. And then apply some amalgamating tape, which is highly funny when you're doing that. And then apply some cloth tape around and then apply some cloth tape to fully seal that joint.
So thanks very much for watching my tutorial there. If you need any information from me, you can look for me on Facebook, on LinkedIn and Twitter, and also on YouTube. And you can check out my website as well, jasoncombe.co.uk. Thank you.